In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen. I don't want to make too much of this first statement in the Gospel that we just prayed, but it has this meaning for me personally. It says, Jesus rejoiced in the Spirit and said, I praise you, Father, who is Lord of heaven and earth, that you have hidden these things, these discrete meanings, from the wise and the prudent, but you have revealed it to the babies. For so it seemed pleasing in your sight. And by babes he means people who are innocent, people who are naive, people who are not calculating, people who, when they think of something, they think of it in its pure form. This is why I allow children to babble in the church, and I don't rebuke them. When they're older and they understand the words that they're saying clearly, then they have to have some control. But babies are allowed to babble because God knows that they may be having a conversation with angels. So, and I'm not one of these touchy-feely guys, as you know me to be. I do not count the number of angels that can stand on the head of a pin. This is not something in which I'm interested. So the silliness, take that away from your mind. I mean it directly. We don't know what children see. They are not able to communicate to us. We also know that most of the communication that we enjoy as adults comes through language which they don't have. The Lord is not going to leave anybody alone. The retarded person, the person who has had a brain injury or a stroke, or a person who has Alzheimer's, the Lord does not abandon that person simply because speech leaves them or speech no longer has meaning. The Lord never abandons any of His children, just as we do not abandon our earthly children. So, this is the thing that is discreet. Remember when the Lord in the garden said, do not yet touch me, for I have not ascended to my Father. And later, I go to my God and your God. What was He saying in this time? He wasn't saying that He was not God, right? He was saying that you don't begin to understand the relationship that I have with God the Father Almighty. And He was looking into the hearts of those that surrounded Him. But there are some who understand this relationship. There are some who have this purity of heart and soul, and they understand the distinctions. I would have been exactly as Mary Magdalene was. I would have rushed Him. I would have wanted to have embraced Him or kissed His feet or have done something to show the reality of the thing that I was experiencing by my sensual nature, by my taste and by my touch and by my sight and by my hearing, by every sense that I possess, to bind this to the experience. But there are some people that experience beyond the sensuality of our nature. These are great saints, but their greatness is not because of their mind. It's rather because of the lack of the interference of the mind. It's very unusual that you will find a theologian called a saint. A theologian is like a scientist. And scientists are not the best lovers of earth. The gardener might be the better lover of earth, not the geologist, the geophysicist, not the agronomist, but the gardener, the simple gardener. And so in this simplicity, and when we look at the spiritual literature that we have, we notice with great distinction that some people are called simple. But you know very well that in our culture, if you're called simple, it means that you lack the power of deep thought. Oh, he's simple-minded. Or he's simple. Complexity is not what we are talking about now. It's not like erudition. It's not like the sophistication of education. It's like the impact of the experience and the immediate contact with God without any kind of curtain to pull back or any kind of matrix to disassemble. It's a direct experience. I think of these pure experiences when I see mothers, new mothers with their babies. Now, you have to observe a new mother with her baby when she's alone, because she will act nervous or even, forgive me, stupid when people are around, because she is trying to impress people by what a good mother she is, and look at the way in which she cares for her child. But when the two are just alone, when they are just alone, and you see the interchange, sometimes, but rarely, this occurs with fathers. Rarely. But with mothers, almost always, there is this sense of communication. And it's on a very deep level. On a very deep level. And someone may say, well, it's confused because of the fleshly matters. You know, the child hears the heartbeat. The mother knows the smell. You know, if you pick up a baby bird from a nest, and in picking up that baby bird from the nest, you transmit some of your odor, it's quite common for the mother bird, or both sets of birds, male and female, to abandon that bird because they don't think it's their own any longer. It's a strange bird, because of the transmission of the odor from the hand of the person that touched it. That's why when you see people going into eagles' aeries, that you find them wearing gloves with which to touch the babies, and then they usually touch all of the babies in case even the glove will impart some odor or some distinction. But it's not that I'm talking about. It's not the case of the smell or the heartbeat or the mother's voice or any of those things, the warmth of her body or the milk that flows from her. Not that. In cases, there is something else, and it's beyond that. And that's the way it is with the saints of the church who understand, and for whom God would not say, I go to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. He would just say, I am going to the Father. I am going to the Lord. Because he would know that they knew. It's something for all of us to strive for, to get to the essential nature of God. And what is that? To not be distracted by the appearances, because appearances are always deceiving. There's this priest, I'm not going to tell you his name. I was talking to some people last night, and I haven't had anything to do with this priest because he looks ugly. He looks ugly to me. He looks sour. He looks like an unappetizing dish of food, and I won't even go near it to taste it. But then I found out from another priest that he did this most delicious thing, and I partook of it. And now I want to get to know him, because he's obviously much more than I had ever thought. Much more than I had ever. Appearances can be deceiving. You may find, as the disciples of Saint Bishoy found when they were promised by Saint Bishoy that they would see Christ if they just went to the spot. And Saint Bishoy was the only one who helped the old man sitting by the way. And when he picked him up to carry him, because the old man had said, I want to see Jesus too, that as the burden became more difficult to bear, Saint Bishoy looked and saw the impression that was made in the feet of the Lord by the nails, and when he looked up he saw the face of the Lord. But those who had been in such a hurry to see couldn't see, because appearances are deceiving. Appearances are deceiving. I'm talking about essences. You know, sometimes when you hear great music, one of my favorite things is the Tchaikovsky's Overture to Romeo and Juliet. And I know the story of Romeo and Juliet very well. But I can't tell when the sword fight begins. I can't tell when the argumentation begins. I can't tell where the death begins. But when I listen to the music, if I take away the substructure of the plot of Shakespeare, and I just listen to the music, it carries me to exactly that same location. And that's the entire point of my discourse today, is that in your worship, you should be moving. You should be moving as though you were being carried by a great river, and the current in that river was going to bring you unharmed to a good end. You don't need to swim. You don't need to try to float. You don't need to do anything. Just keep your head above water and relax. And relax. And if you are able to do this and to let the words pour down upon you like rain from the heaven, to listen to the words of the liturgy carefully, you will have this experience in increasingly closer forms. It won't come right away. It may never come to some of you at all, but it is available to you. Because the Lord doesn't give us something simply that we may be tantalized by it, to be, choked in our own desire because we wish to reach for something but we haven't the length of arm. He doesn't do that. He doesn't tempt us. But He will give us if we are careful and we are looking for the right thing. There's so many ways to get distracted, even in good ways. Yesterday the deacons were praying something and they said impious. And we will not tolerate this pronunciation in our church. Impious. I am right and all the other dictionaries are wrong. It's impious, meaning not pious. It's not impious, as in having the quality of an imp. No, we do not have the quality of an imp. Neither the person that we were castigating at the time, Nestor. But he was impious. He did not understand. And have you ever thought about this? You just heard in the Cynic Tsar about the Third Ecumenical Council. You just heard that there were 200 bishops convened, and one man stood against them, Nestor, the Archbishop of Constantinople, or the Patriarch, we should say, the Patriarch of Constantinople. Can you imagine the stubbornness and the pride, the hard-headed ignorance that he embraced? This is the opposite about what I'm speaking of. He will never know God in the way that some child like Daniel might know. Daniel might know God way better than Nestor ever could possibly know Him. Because he doesn't have the expectations of the fulfillment of some sentential calculus that is going to be grand, to parade around in immaculate vocabulary so that people are wowed. And he too is called Chrysostom. Sorry. I was going to say Chrysostomos, and that's why I came out with extra Chrysostom. It's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing to wish to invent God in your own image, even if it's by theological definitions. But that's what people do. They create God in their own image according to their definitions, and they hold on to it. And by the way, may I say, the Nestorian church is alive and well today. May I also say that the Arian church is alive and well today. The Arius has not left us, and Nestor has not left us. And can you imagine the strenuousness with which these people have to do backflips in order to look at Saint Mary and not see her the way that she should be seen, as the Mother of God, not the Mother of Christ, Christophoros, but Theotokos, or Christostokos. That's what I meant to say, not Christothoros, but Christotokos. Look, it's why I don't say Theotokos, it's why I say Mother of God when we say the prayers. Because to me, the word mother has so many more implications than Theotokos, birth giver of God. She is the birth giver of God, but she's mother. She's mother. And I loved my mother. And my mother loved me more than I loved her. But my mother loved me, and I can only imagine what it was like to mother the incarnate Logos. And she was not cowed by this, meaning it was not overwhelming to her. She accepted it. And she did all the things that any mother does. Embracing her child and feeding her child and clothing her child and bathing her child. So this is what we want. The reason that people have desired to see things and haven't seen them, and the reason that people have desired to hear things and haven't heard them, is not just some historical wrinkle in time, but rather because they weren't prepared. We must prepare our souls and prize our innocence and keep the tenderness that is within the capacity of all of us to regenerate if it has become calloused, so that we understand God in the way that He fully wishes to be understood. Glory be to His holy name, both now and ever, and unto the age of all ages. Amen.